Hello gang, today we're going to be comparing the 2021 Yamaha R1 to the 2023 BMW S1000RR. I've had plenty of time to ride both motorcycles and I think it's a good time to do a fair comparison between the two. So starting with the 21 R1, the main difference is primarily the motor that it has, which is cross plane, and that provides it the very distinct sound that it has. It also has impact on the way that it rides. But the biggest thing is either folks like it or they hate it, which is the sound of the engine. Okay, so in comparison to the BMW, the sounds are vastly different between these two motorcycles. The other thing to note between these two motorcycles is that the center of gravity between them is slightly different. It is lower on the R1 versus the RR. It's not significant, but it is noticeable. And it'll be more noticeable when you start doing tight turns. It took me quite a bit of time to get adjusted to the BMW as far as the leaning goes. The other thing is that the riding position is also very different. You kind of sit on top of the bike on the R1 and you sit a little bit more kind of upright on the BMW. It's not significant, but it is noticeable when you start riding the motorcycles. Other thing to note between these two motorcycles is that the electronics are significantly better on the BMW as opposed to the R1. R1 is a lot more crude. You notice that when you start using the quick shifter, everything seems to be very rough, very raw, where on the BMW it's a lot more refined. Now, the BMW has some things that I don't necessarily like about this motorcycle, and that has to do primarily with the controls, specifically this little dial here. And this is going to come into play when you're going through the menus, but it also comes up when you're having to use the turn signal. Okay, because of this dial here, your hand sits a lot more to the left and you have to reach a lot more to get to the controls as far as turning on and turning off the turn signals. And this is the one thing that I really do not like. If I ride, for example, the R1 or the Suzuki that I have, the turn signals are in a more natural position and I can get access to them a lot easier. I don't know if it's just me, but I do notice that this dial here gets a little bit in the way. It also bothers me when you need to cancel out of the menu. The way to do that is to use this little toggle this way. Again, I don't know if I like that. It kind of bothers me. I wish there was a different way that they could have arranged this little dial. Okay, outside of that, I would say that when I was referring to the electronics, they're definitely superior on the BMW. Just the way it looks, the option that it has, the different types of menus that you can bring up, it's really, really cool. One thing to note on the BMW, which is a little odd, sort of odd, maybe not, but one is it does have the fuel indicator as far as where you're at on the fuel, right? Which is great. Most of the motorcycles do not have that. They'll only kick off a low fuel light when you start breaching that whatever is it, the 5 gallon limit before you go empty. So this one does tell you what your fuel is at. However, it does kick off super early, and then starts, the way that it brings up that message is that it takes up the entire screen that says you have low fuel versus like a small indicator. It's really odd. So that's just something I would call out that I noticed on this motorcycle. I opted for the cheapest package I could get, and that's simply so I could reallocate the cash saved on a better exhaust. Okay, the stock exhaust that comes with a motorcycle, it still connects to the catalytic converter, which I knew I was going to take off anyway. But a few things that I lost were heated grips, cruise control, and then what was the other thing? Oh yeah, the dynamic suspension, which I honestly don't think I need. I don't need electronics to tell me how I should be riding the motorcycle. Okay, so I opted to get rid of that package, saved a little bit of cash, and with the cash that I saved, I was able to get this awesome full Acura exhaust, okay, which has a very sweet tone to it, especially when you open up and go wide open throttle. All right, other things that I love about this motorcycle is the headlights. I think it has a very nice aggressive look to them. And they're balanced, meaning that when you turn on the motorcycle, the lights go on, both of the headlights turn on, versus on the R1, only the left one does, which is a little bit of a change on their part. Yamaha used to have that same approach where they had two headlights turn on when the bike started, and then it also incorporated the high beams inside of them. And then went away from that on the newer models. I don't know why they did that change. I don't like it. I would prefer that both headlights go on. Other thing is, as we're sitting here, you may notice that it has these, the RR has these winglets. I'm neutral about them. Do I like them? Sure. I don't think they're very necessary, but I'm sure you'll be able to tell a difference when you go on the track. Some people love them, some people hate them. I'm neutral about them. All right, let's go ahead and fire up the motorcycle. Just a reminder that this is a full Acura exhaust, and I do notice that when I fire up this motorcycle, it actually sounds much louder than the R1. Okay, once it comes down, warms up a tad bit, then it goes fairly quiet. And again, the tone of the motorcycle, just the beauty of it is when you start going wide open throttle. So let's go ahead and fire it up. Nice. If you heard that little loping when we first started the motorcycle, this bike, supposedly they say that you can install the full exhaust and not have to do a tune on it. As you heard, that I think what the ECU is doing is making adjustments when you first fire it up. From there, it's fine. When you ride the motorcycle, it's quite fine. I don't have any popping or anything like that, or anything severe, I should say. So does it require a tune? Probably. It's something I'm going to do later down the road. But does it need one? I would say probably not. It rides quite smooth stock. So there you have it. That was the 23 RR. Let's go ahead and switch out to the Yamaha and see what some of the cool things about it are, and then some things that I don't necessarily like. All right, we're now switching over to the Yamaha R1, and I would tell you that for the last, 4 to 5 years, maybe longer, they really haven't changed a whole lot. I think they found a sweet spot on this bike. The motor, again, some people love it, other people hate it, and that has to do just with the way that it sounds. Outside of the sound itself, I'll tell you that it behaves very differently. than most of the other bikes. It has a much higher revving range, and the power develops, I would say, above 6,000, maybe even to 8,000 RPM mark. Okay, so because of that, and because of the way that it's geared, it's very different from other motorcycles that I've ridden. Okay, and that's consistent for different generations of the R1. I would say after 2009, so 2009 till today, it has been very consistent in the way that the bikes handle and the way that the bikes feel and sound. Okay, so that said, this particular motorcycle has got the Works exhaust. We'll hear it in just a few minutes. Excellent quality exhaust, by the way. I highly recommend it. On the R1s, installing the exhaust is much easier than other motorcycles, and that's primarily because you do not have to change out the headers. Okay, all you got to do is do some unbolting here, drop off the stock cat, and then put on the new exhaust. Okay, you don't have to go and mess around with the entire exhaust right here. On the BMW, I did have to do that. So when I did the full exhaust, I had to replace everything, headers all the way down to the can. On the R1, I did not need to do that, which is really cool. Other things about this motorcycle, I do notice that the clutch, and this is one of the things that drives me nuts, is that the clutch lever is extremely tight stock. Okay, so for the last two generations of the R1s, I've had a 2012 prior to this motorcycle, I had to swap out the clutch lever to this RSC stunt clutch, which the whole point behind this clutch lever is to make it lighter to pull. Okay, otherwise stock is extremely tight. So stop and go traffic, you're gonna get cramps in your hands. A lot of people complain about it. The other thing that I may have mentioned in my previous reviews of this particular bike is the stock mirrors. I don't know if it's the positioning or their shape, but they suck. I can never get them to be just right where I can ride upright and see very well, and then when I tuck in, it just I cannot find the right positioning. I do not have that same problem with the BMW. Okay, so when we look at the BMW here, the way that their headlights are, I mean the mirrors are, is maybe a little bit, they come out a little bit more further out, and the shape is very different. Okay, as opposed to the Yamaha. Okay, and that's the one of the few things that I really dislike about this motorcycle. I have already mentioned the headlights. Okay, beautiful look, also very comparable to the BMW, right? As we can see the difference between them, the design somewhat similar, slightly different. The BMW look is a lot more aggressive in my opinion. And again, the one thing I don't like about this motorcycle is that when you turn it on, only the left headlight turns on. Okay, not both of them. When you turn on the brights, yes, both of them kick on, but that's one thing to note. All right, other things that I should mention as we're on this side of the bike is a quick shifter. Works exceptionally well. It has certain conditions set on it as opposed to the BMW. On the BMW, you are able to quick shift down while you're still accelerating. Okay, so if you have your throttle open just slightly, you can still shift the bike down. That condition does not work on the R1. And I'm not saying that that's best practice in terms of having your throttle slightly open, but it can be quite annoying that you have to be completely rolled off the throttle before you can downshift on this bike. Okay. Otherwise, the other thing to mention is that it's a lot more crude than it is on the BMW. BMW, everything is very smooth. Shift up, shift down is just wonderful. On the R1, I can't say the same thing. It's just very raw. Okay. Outside of that, what else can I say about this bike? The menu on it is also very nice in comparison to the BMW. Not as nice as the BMW, but very functional and very nice. Okay. That's the startup procedure. The menu gives me everything that I need to see what's happening with the bike. Okay, and then it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of adjusting the modes. All right, so let's go ahead and fire up this bike and just listen to what it sounds like. And then we'll do kind of our final summary of these two motorcycles. Go from there. All right, let's go ahead and fire this one up. Should already be in neutral. That was the exhaust tone on the R1. Notice that the startup was significantly quieter than on the RR, but the tone gets quite loud when you start opening things up. Okay, and it has a little bit more of a deeper rumble on it than the RR. Thing to note between these two bikes that I have noticed is that their rear brake position is slightly more comfortable on the R1 as opposed to the BMW. I think it's because it sits a little bit more horizontal. Okay, if I look at it this way, it's a lot more flat, and I don't know if the foot peg is a little bit longer or not, if it comes out a little bit more longer this way in comparison to the BMW. I have an issue just with the way that this thing sits. You can see that it's sloped down instead of being more horizontal. That's one. And the second part is that this little guy is kind of tucked in too much that way. So my foot seems to be just catching the very edge of it when I put my boot down on it. Okay, so just something to note. It's something that I noticed, and something, I don't know if I'll correct it or not. So far I'm living with it because I really do not use the rear brake a whole lot, but I just thought that's something to call out. I have already mentioned the ride height. To just expand further on that, the BMW does sit maybe an inch higher than the R1. Okay, so I have plans to lower this motorcycle, primarily because this is my wife's bike and she's shorter than me. I am 5'11", okay, and I already feel like I'm standing somewhat on the tippy toes. Okay, I'm not flat-footed at all when I stand up the BMW. Okay, completely opposed to how it's like on the Yamaha, where when I sit on it, I'm completely flat-footed. And again, I'm 5'11". My wife is 5'6". She's still able to ride the BMW, but I'll tell you, if you're a bit shorter, that's going to go against you just a tad bit, because this bike does sit a bit higher compared to the R1. Okay, so I'll tell you, you'll be a lot more comfortable sitting on the Yamaha than you do on the BMW. Okay, now that said, they do sell lowering links. Okay, and lower links, what they'll do is they'll replace this part right here, and you have the option to lower it by either 1 inch or 2 inches. If you lower it by 1 inch, all you gotta do is swap this one out for a shorter link and you'll be good to go. Does not really impact the dynamic of the motorcycle. There's no additional parts that you got to change. If you go down the 2-inch route, there is significantly more work that's involved in getting that done. Okay, so it's going to cost you more, and it's going to be it'll have some impact on the way that the motorcycle handles. Okay, so keep that in mind. So can you adjust the ride height of the motorcycle? Yes. It does cost a little bit of money, but it can be done. So if you're a shorter rider, you'll probably want to consider that as an option. All right, let's talk about another topic, which is the financials. Okay, both of the motorcycles are going to be fairly similar in the price range. Okay, with the BMW being slightly more expensive. If you're okay with slimming things down, similar to what I did, I went with a base package because I knew what I wanted to do with the exhaust. Obviously, if you want other nice features on the motorcycle, it's going to cost you some money. So I believe the bone stock version like this one was around 18K. So you tack on another 2,000 to 3,000 if you have the aftermarket, or I should say the stock Acura exhaust that connects to the catalytic converter, heated grips, cruise control, additional modes, and dynamic suspension. So that tacks on another $3,000. So you're looking at about $21,000.
21,000. What? What the fuck?
Without any fees, taxes, all the other fun stuff. And obviously that can range, right? Where on the R1, you don't have as many options like that. So you're typically going to be leaving the dealerships after taxes and documentation fees and everything else right around that $18,000 to $19,000 range.
Now you're speaking my language.
So that's kind of a thing on the financials. The other thing that you may want to consider also is that the fees for servicing the BMW are going to be significantly higher. And I'm not talking about just slightly higher than the R1. I'll say significantly higher. All right. So if you're going to go and get the bike serviced, expect to pay a heck of a lot more for the BMW than the R1.